Hello, my dear friends. You're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 17th of September. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. First, we're going to start with the Kherson district. The Ukrainians are attacking the Russians all along the front line, trying to find the weakest position. And as you can see, they still control the bridgehead on this side of the river. Furthermore, today we got some information from the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, and they reported that the Russians during the previous hours attacked and bombed the Ukrainians near town Kostромka and Bezymyanne. That means that Ukrainians still controls this area. The only thing nobody knows, at least we don't know, the number of Ukrainians in this area and the number of their armored vehicles and their tanks. So we'll see and follow the situation. If we're talking about the south of this area, about near Kherson, if you remember yesterday, I told you that Ukrainians tried to do some counter-offensive operation in this area, and today we got report that the main group that was involved in that offensive operation was 28th Mechanized Brigade. And the Russians are saying that as a result of attack of that brigade, they lost somewhere around 120 soldiers and something around 20 armored vehicles, including tanks and just trucks and armored vehicles. So it's just about this area. So as you can see, these two areas is the most important, the most hot places on the front line. If we're talking about the north, the situation is stable, mainly because of like destroyed dam and the situation with supply and support in this area. But I believe that like in 2-3 weeks, when the level of the water goes down, the Ukrainians will be able to activate. They won't have a lot of time, but anyway, a few weeks they will have to do something on the north of Kherson district in this area. If we're talking about entire region, the Russians are saying that during the previous 24 hours they killed up to 260 soldiers. The Ukrainian losses is somewhere around 260 soldiers and something around 40 armored vehicles, including tanks. So this situation about Kherson district. If we're talking about the Energodar, the Ukraine is still attacking this area, and they're still shelling this area. And as you know, there are a lot of still problems with this power plant. The Ukrainians are trying to force the Russians to demilitarize this area, but the Russians are saying that, of course, they are not planning to do this anyway. If we're talking about the area from Vasilievka towards the south towards Ugledar, this front line, Oryakh Gulay Pole front line, the situation is stable. The Russians are shelling the supply chains in this area, the block checkpoints in this area. As you remember, the Ukrainians also were trying to understand the situation on the front line, sending more and more forces, trying to do some recon combat. All Ukrainians recon combats in the south were defeated by the Russians, and we got some information that the Russians managed to capture some armored vehicles of Western production in this area. Furthermore, today we got a very interesting update. We can say that the second confirmation that the Russians took control over Vremivka and Novopol, these two towns. If you remember, we got this update a few weeks ago before the counter-offensive operation, and today the DPR authorities adopted some law, and as a result of their adoption, these two towns were included under the sphere of influence of this region, of the local region. So we can say that this town, Vremovka and Novopol, is under total DPR control in this area. And by the way, this is very interesting update, because if you remember, the Russians, every time they took control over this or that town, few weeks later the Ukrainians started the counter-offensive operation. If we're talking about Kherson, right before the counter-offensive operation, the Russians reported about taking control over Blagodatne and over Blagodatovka, these two towns, and after that the Ukrainians started their counteroffensive operation. So that was some kind of requiem combat, and the main goal of the Russians were just to do some damage to the Ukrainians and to force them to start that operation, and the Ukrainians started. The same situation we can say about north of Ukraine from Kharkiv area. If you remember, the Russians reported about establishing control over Udy and about taking control over a few towns in the north of Kharkiv. And a few days, even a few weeks later, they started counter-offensive operation in this area, and as a result, they liberated a big part of Kharkiv district. And now we can say that the south of Ukraine, this area, the same picture. The Russians report about taking two towns, so I believe that was also some kind of requiem combat. So I believe that soon the Ukrainians will start some offensive operation in this area, but we will talk about this situation later. If we're talking about the report of Ministry of Defense, they didn't give any numbers from this region. So that means that at least they didn't have any information about the losses among Ukrainians on this front line. If we are talking about Donetsk region, today we got a very important update from this area. There is an icon. It's like this icon has the title of promotion. That means that the Russians are saying that they was very successful during these days near Krasnogorovka, and some Russian sources are saying that the Russians managed to enter Krasnogorovka and to establish control over the east part of this town, over, let's say, over this residential area. I'm not sure exactly about the real area that is under Russian control, but we can state that there are clashes already inside this town. So this is very important because this town is another fortress as Pesky, as Marinka. So these like four fortresses in this area, like Avdiivka, Pesky, used to be Krasnogorovka, and Marinka. Marinka is controlled by the Russian 50%. There is no progress in Avdiivka. Pesky is under total Russian control, and now the Russians started, or DPR to be more precise, started storming of Krasnogorovka. So I believe that this upcoming week will be under the flag of Battle for Krasnogorovka. If we're talking about the Pesky, the Ukrainians, we got almost every day we got reports from the Russian side that Ukrainians trying to return control over Pesky. They're sending like few tanks all the time, few tanks with support of infantry and armored vehicles, but every time they were defeated. But I believe that they will continue doing this, trying to return control over this Pesky fortress. So we'll see and follow this situation as well. If we're talking about Donbas region, about this area, the Russians are saying that during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians lost up to 230 soldiers and 33 armored vehicles. And to be more precise, the Russians were saying that they were attacking 58 motorized brigade. If we take a look at the map of this position, we're gonna find this 58th brigade in Artyomovsk Bakhmut, their main position, so in this area. Now let's move on. One more topic about Donetsk. As you can see, the central part, there is like a lot of fire icons, and the Ukrainians shelling this town heavily during the previous day. As soon as the counter-offensive operation in the north stopped, the Ukrainians started shelling this town heavily. Every day we got more and more reports about casualties among civilians and so on. And as you can see, the Ukrainians are shelling the central part of this town, not the edge part with the trenches where they can find their enemy, but they're shelling the civilian residential area in the middle of this town. So this is not very good, but for now the DPR can't do anything with this because the Ukrainians are using Avdiivka, Krasnogorovka, Marinki to do this. So if they want to reduce the shelling of this town, they need to push the Ukrainians from this front line, but for now they are not able to do this because of like a very heavy fortification all along this front line. But they are doing this right now, so I believe that sooner or later they will be able to do this. Anyway, if we are talking about the Bakhmut Seversk front line, as you can see that we discussed this yesterday, that the Russian source map has been updated, that these towns like Nikolaevka, Drugaya is under Russian control, they're pushing and developing their offensive operation direction of Kurdyumovka, Adradovka, and Nikolaevka. Nikolaevka Drugaya is very important checkpoint for the Russians. If we take a look at the Western sources map, we're gonna see that these two towns, is located on the let's say the west side of this Bakhmutka river, of this river. So that means that the Russians managed to cross this river and establish control. So that means they are already on that side of the river. According to this map, they're still on the east side of this river, but so we know how the Western source map updates. So let's follow this situation anyway. Sooner or later, we're going to understand who's right and who is not correct in this situation. If we are talking about other lines, today we got report from the Bakhmut. The Russians are saying that Wagner's, they are developing their offensive operation in this town, and the Russians are saying that the Wagners managed to penetrate the defense line in this town, on the east side of this town, and that the Russians, to be more precise, Wagners, entered the residential area right in the middle part of this town. So this one, a little bit to the north, and so east-north part of Bakhmut now is under Russian control, or at least is in the gray zone. If we're talking about the other front lines, there is no changes. There are still heavy clashes, but the Russians are pushing towards Seversk. There are a lot of forces from the Ukrainian side near Seversk, and now the Seversk is a very important area for the Ukrainians, and the Russians understand that, so that's why they increase their pressure on this area, and I'll explain to you why. First of all, Seversk is the final, we can say, checkpoint, final fortress in this area, and if the Russians are able to take control over Seversk, they will be able to stop the counter-offensive operation on the line on the Seversky-Donetsk River, on this line. If you take a look at this map, you're going to see that the Russian source map has been updated. As you can see, the Ukrainians managed to cross this river. See, this green line, you see this, it's the border of the Russian-controlled territory right after the counter-offensive operation. So during this week, the Ukrainians managed to take all towns along the river, like Studionok, Sosnovo, Svetogorsk. At least they managed to take these towns, or at least they're in the gray zone. That means that the Russians are not able to control them, but the Ukrainians are able to send their commanders and scout in these towns. So there are heavy clashes, there are a lot of traps, there are a lot of battles in these towns, and so on. So Studionok, Sosnovo, Svetogorsk, Shchurovo, Stary Karavan, Dibrova. So all these towns along the river is now under, we can say, foot control of the Ukrainians. They can cross the river, they can send their forces, and so on. So if the Russians are able to take Seversk or to penetrate this defense line, at least they will be able to stop all these attacks from Dronovka till Krivoluk. At least some part of this area will be without Ukrainians, and they will lose this opportunity and the possibility to attack this area. So this is why the Russians are increase their pressure on this front line. So we'll see. As we discussed about this area, the Ukrainians are sending more and more forces without counting losses, and we understand them why they're doing this, because it's already 17th of September. In October, the level of the water will be increased, and the temperature of the river will be reduced, and they will lose, and the all these forests, now it's still, this forest still green, but sooner or later these forests will lose its leaves. So that's why it will be much more difficult for the Ukrainians to do all these crossings, to attack this area. They need to have a stable bridgehead in this area. So that's why the Russians understand the situation as well. If we take a look at the map of disposition, we're going to see that the Russians on this area, at least according to this map of disposition, have two main forces. The first one is the 1st Guard Tank Army. It's a very powerful armored vehicle, armored army. So for now, we can say that it's a very powerful army, the Russian army. Furthermore, there is a 20th Russian army, and there are also 90th tank division. So the Russians, I'm not saying that they're like on the very safe position. As we can see according to this map, they're losing their territory, or at least they're allowing the Ukrainians to enter this town because of this forest. Because of the Ukrainians are very successful in this forest. They showed this in the previous battles, but the Russians still control Yampol and still controls Liman. Today we got some updates from the Ukrainian side that they managed to do something with Liman, or maybe to enter, or maybe to be not very far from this town, but the Russians don't confirm this information, so that's why I suppose that they still control this area. We're talking about the forest, about the towns in this forest. Yes, I believe that the Russians left this town because of they need to short the front line, and just to be on the safe side and to be able to use their tanks on the fields, on the roads, because if there are tanks army in this area, I believe it's not very easy to and these armies is their main power in this area, so I believe it's not very easy to use the tanks in the forest. So that's why they just a little bit moved back, just on the better position, but they're still holding their area. Furthermore, yesterday we got some updates from Kupiansk. There was a lot of videos and pictures that Ukrainians entered this town, and there was a lot of panic in the internet saying that the Russians left Kupiansk and so on. To tell the truth, the Russian source map, as you can see, has been updated, but there was a lot of later that day, yesterday, we got another confirmation that Ukrainians didn't got the east side of Kupiansk. The only update that this town is in the gray zone, and to be more precise, I believe that the entire area along the river is in the gray zone. According to this map, we see that even industrial zone is under Ukrainian control, but I believe it's not possible. It's not true. Of course, let's wait a little bit. Hardly unlikely that Ukrainians control over entire town, but I believe that they are able to send their commandos and the scouts to the east bank of the river, and of course they are able to move in these towns, in this residential area, and I believe that there are heavy clashes there. But I don't think that, hardly unlikely, they are able to cross the railroad and to enter the industrial zone. But anyway, this is the same reason. It's the same tactic as the Russians uses all along the front line. They use the same tactic in the Kherson district, like this small back that we were talking about, this one. They allow the Ukrainians to enter this area, to cross the river, and from one side the Ukrainians need to support this area by sending more and more forces, but from the other side they are not able to develop this offensive operation because of low capability of this river, of this crossing of this river to support and so on. But from the other side, the Russians use their aircrafts to destroy this everything in this back. The same situation the Russians are doing in Liman area. They left the river, they allowed the Ukrainians to cross the river from many sides, but from the other side, all these places, there are a lot of drones in this area. The Russians' main idea in this area to try to find out, to spot the Ukrainians pontoon bridges, every places where they're trying to cross. After that, the Russians move their artillery and they start shelling the area around the pontoon bridges, trying to reduce the Ukrainians while crossing the river. So this is like some kind of, it's not a trap, I can say, but it's some kind of Russian tactic. They understand that times work on them and time goes in their favor, because in 2-3 weeks, all the separation from the Ukrainian side will be impossible for many reasons, as we discussed. So that's why the Ukrainians from the other side, they need to take Liman and Yampol, and by taking Liman and Yampol, they will be able to establish the stable connection with this town, and they will be able to concentrate more forces on this side of the river, and they will be able to develop their offensive operation. So where we're talking about Studionak, and another important update about that video that we saw yesterday, the Ukrainians, first, they didn't provide any flags that they like to do this if they took control over this or that town. And another important update, that there were no armored vehicles on this town from the Ukrainian side. So that means that they have possibilities to enter, but they don't have possibility to establish entire control. Today we got a very important update that the Ukrainians collect more forces near Dvureche, this small town. The Russians are saying, some Russian sources are saying that the Ukrainians moved in this direction up to 40 armored vehicles, including tanks and artillery systems. That's only tanks and artillery systems. The Russians are saying they believe that the Ukrainians will try to cross Oskol River to establish their position in Dvureche, in this town. Why the Ukrainians need to take this town? Why the Ukrainians need to concentrate their army exactly in this area between Dvureche and Kupiansk? This is the most important area for the Ukrainians, and I believe while the weather allows them, they will try to take control without counting losses, without counting anything. First of all, if we take a look at the Western sources map, we're going to see that there is a railroad, this one, railroad that moves from Vovchansk, like the Russian border, and this railroad moves to Kupiansk, and then the main stations is located on that side of the river, as you can see. And after that, the railroad moves back to the Ukrainian territory. So they need this part, they need to return control over this railroad. With help of this, they will be able to establish stable connection between Vovchansk and Kharkiv. So this line, entire line, will be under control, and of course it will reduce the problems, the Ukrainian problems. And the same situation with Dvorechye, the Russians still have possibility to use this railroad station to support their army near Kupiansk. They're moving this army here, and I believe that the Russians, of course, are not moving their forces towards Kupiansk. They are moving theirs a little bit to the north. After that, they deploy their forces there and move on their own to the direction of Kupiansk. So that's why the Ukrainians need to take Dvorechye to block this area, to pin down the Russians, and it will be like the main attack, one of the main attack, and the second one from Kupiansk, just to return control over this area. If you remember, yesterday we got update that the Ukrainians were shelling area near Valuiki, and their main, we discussed this yesterday, their main attack, the main target in this area was the energy facilities, and they attacked and destroyed those energy facilities, and as a result also the electricity train were stopped and couldn't move. So that's why we understand the Ukrainian plans, the Ukrainian understanding of the situation. I believe that they will start attacking Dvorechye, and of course before that they will shell Valuiki one more time, trying to destroy the facilities in this area to pin down the Russians, and then they will attack in two directions. And they need to do this right now, because for now the level of Skol allows them to do this, but soon they will lose this opportunity. The Russians are saying that during the previous 24 hours they attack the 93rd Mechanized Brigade in this area, this one, the 81st Air Mobile Brigade, Air Assault Brigade, not this one, this Air Mobile Brigade, and Kraken Special Forces, this one that located in Balaklia. And as a result of those attacks, the Ukrainian lost up to 50 soldiers and something around 10 armored vehicles. So this is about the situation, about the front lines and so on. And today I would like to discuss with you another topic, very important topic. As you know, I tried to calculate the Ukrainian losses according to the information from Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. It's up to you to believe or not these numbers, of course, but because of the fact that I don't have any other source, I believe that at least we need to have some flag to understand the real situation. So I started this calculation on the 11th of July, so we can say that there are 2 months has passed, a little bit more than 2 months has passed since I started this calculation. And for those 2 months, the Ukrainian lost more than 52,000 soldiers. And of course, we understand that there were several numbers of counteroffensive operation that increased this number. But anyway, for a little bit more than 2 months, the Ukrainian lost up to 52,000 soldiers, according to the Russian source, of course. I don't have numbers from March till the July. I believe that the numbers are maybe the same or even more. So we can say that since the beginning of this special operation, Ukraine lost more than 100,000 soldiers. And now we see that the Russians changed their state. They are not offensive anymore. The only area where the Russians are trying to attack is Bakhmut. There are Wagner storming this area. So this area, they need to take this Bakhmut for many reasons. They're very important, focal point for them. They will try to encircle and so on. But anyway, if we're talking about other front lines, the Russians are trying to defend. And of course, we can talk about the classic ratio 5-4 to 1 soldier. And I believe that, and the Ukrainians, as we know, are planning to develop their offensive operation, to do them more and more. So that's why they're going to have more and more losses. So I believe that if since the beginning of this operation, Ukrainian losses is more than 100,000 soldiers, I believe that by the end of this year, because of the fact that Ukrainians need to attack and because of the upcoming winter, wet weather, by the end of this year, the Ukrainian losses might be somewhere around 200,000 soldiers. Of course, this number is not about just killed, it's wounded, killed, lost, and captured, and so on. But anyway, that's a lot. That's a lot. It's something around more than 20% of their current army. That's a lot, and so this is the bad situation from the Ukrainians. Yes, we understand that they have, we can say, like endless number of support of soldiers, but anyway, they're losing the best of them. They're losing every day those one who is the front line. Yes, they have some reserves in the back, but those forces from the back, they don't know what is going on the front line. Some of them, of course, know. But anyway, there is a very high risk that by the end of this year, the Ukrainian losses might be even more than 200,000 soldiers. And this is very bad. This is very bad, and maybe after that, the Russians will be able to start and to repeat their offensive operations since the very beginning, trying to destroy the rest of the Ukrainian army. And this is the bad side from the Ukrainian side. Now let's talk about the Russians' problem. And the Russians also have a lot of problems, and the main problem, I just understood the situation this morning when I tried to analyze about the losses, about their defeat in Kharkiv area, why did they left this area. I tried to analyze the information that the Wagners are started recruiting process in the prisons, so I tried to understand what's going on. And my opinion, I'll give you my opinion that, that the Russians try to use their professional army. What does it mean, professional army? First of all, there are no conscripts. Maybe there are some conscripts, I don't know, but at least the Russians are not trying to spread this information officially. The main problem in professional army, if we're talking about the Russian side, is the contracts. And yesterday, a few days ago, we discussed about the situation that Wagners are trying to recruit forces from prisons, and they were saying that they are signing half-a-year contracts. Half-a-year contracts. And we are talking about September, and we can say that those guys from the Russian army who signed a contract with the Russians in February and March, I'm talking about volunteers, I'm talking about any other forces, we can say that in the end of August and in the beginning of September, the contracts have been expired. They expired. And why think like this? Because exactly today, I saw a lot of updates, a lot of videos from Russian territory, from their towns, when some soldiers have already returned back home, and there was some videos from malls, from shops, from the public places where those soldiers who used to be soldier in the Ukraine, whose contracts have ended, they were drunk, and there were some fights with locals, and they were crying that I am the one who was fighting for our motherland, and what did you do for our motherland? So as you can see, now we see that during the next 6 months we can say that the Russians may lose a very big number of forces. Exactly, I'm talking about those whose contracts will be expired. And this is the problem, and the Russians understand this, and it's very difficult to force these professional guys who sign a contract to stay in the army, because everybody understands the situation in this area. And this is the reason, maybe this is the reason why the Russians started recruit in prison, just with one purpose, to replace those forces whose contracts have been expired. And this is the Russians' problem. So they have always problem to accumulate enough of forces, enough of power. And the Ukrainians' problem is that they have a lot of losses, and sooner or later their army can be ended. And that's it, because if we're talking about the end of the year, it's something around 200,000 soldiers. If we're talking about the March of the next year, it might be somewhere around 300,000 soldiers. So the numbers are very big if nothing changes. So I believe that sooner or later this situation should be turned into some other state. And I believe everybody understands, and the Ukrainians and the Russians understand, that they can't continue this war. The Ukrainians has losses, and the Russians are no longer able to recruit army because of understanding of the real situation, and more forces are leaving army because of expiring of contracts. What are they planning to do? I believe that sooner or later we are going to see the negotiation process. Yes, the Ukrainians will try to attack Oskol, Liman. This is the main battle. Maybe they will try to start counter-offensive operation in the south, but if the Ukrainians will be defeated in the south, in Oskol, in the south, and if they lose Bakhmut, I believe that they will start negotiation. So we'll see, we'll follow the situation as well. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you that we condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good weekend. Bye bye.